Welcome to the studio, Stefan Bjärkefur. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Tell us why you're here.
Well, supposedly there is a big thing happening called Conf, and you need some insights in terms of how to benefit from data in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd actually share a couple of my thoughts.
Okay. And what is it in your background that's makes you have all those insights for us?
I've got 15 plus years of the real estate industry, working as a CEO of a software company, developing multiple solutions of various kinds. I've had the opportunity to follow agents from base root level all the way up to the strategic level. What kind of needs do we have in terms of the services, platforms, and softwares? It's been changing rapidly over the past decade. And just being part of that journey, trying to understand what's happening, it's a challenge. And I think that with all the different kind of developments we've done over the years and with customers across different markets, we've gained a really good insight into that.
The name of your speech today is the value of data in the real estate industry. How would you define data? Is that too big of a question?
It's quite big, yeah. So I'm actually going to bring some context in my insights today. So I'll be speaking about the very high level, which is very complicated for some to actually fathom and try to grasp what to do. And then I'm trying to break it down to super simple things that everybody has access to.
Okay, but you are a founder and C-level manager, so you're on a strategic level.
Correct. I try to be there.
Yeah. Okay, we're looking forward to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Right, so today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my insights into data in the real estate industry. And actually, I'm going to start with the bottom line up front. I'm going to try to provide an overview. And that's the fact that regardless of what kind of technical setup you have or your ability to harvest data, there are learnings to get out of this for the entire real estate industry. And you don't have to be a data analyst in order to find or identify valuable patterns of actionable data. And I'm going to speak about this from a high level, and then we'll go down to some basic examples. And to start off with a high level, there is a problem that we've identified across all markets, basically, and all customers that we're working with. And it's the fact that data, by definition, as it is today, is scattered. And that means that data is actually divided over multiple data points across multiple services, making it very difficult for most to understand where to start, what kind of data to aggregate, how to align it, how to understand it. And just to give you some kind of reference to that, we've got customers across multiple markets, and we've seen for the past 10 years how the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure, has just been growing. The number of services and platforms we're using today is often above 20. That says something about the complexity that you need to address. And I'm going to try to paint you a picture. Take your website. As an example, it's the absolute most strategical asset that you have. This is where you're building your brand. This is where you're converting inbounds to business opportunities. You're running a lot of professional marketing programs across different channels, and everything is pointing back to the same place, hopefully, and that's your website. And just generating a huge amount of data throughout those different programs also creates a responsibility or an opportunity to actually manage that in a new way or a better way. So think about what happens on your website today. You've got a lot of different visitors. You have your forms converting inbounds into a business opportunity, going all the way down to an agent. But question is, are you getting the minimum amount of information with you? As is, where did it come from? Who is it that I'm supposed to be contacting? What's the purpose, etc.? Or are you actually reaping the benefits of having access to a much wider information portfolio from the website? And most often the case is that you are not. So basically, there is a whole online behavior. It's a huge pool of data that we can actually use in different ways to validate that business potential and navigate where you should go next, thus increasing conversion, thus increasing your performance. So just connecting it with your CRM software or your lead management software, your sales engine, and adding the right data down to it is key to actually get something out of it. And put a new level on top of that. I'm pretty sure that most of you have some kind of CRM. And in some cases, you probably also have a property management software. It might be identical, the same one. It might be different. Sometimes it's even 3 or 4 different solutions. But what my point is that you have a property management software running the entire transaction selling a property. And you've got so many key events and key points of data throughout that process that you need to take into consideration in the validation process and the sales process. So the next question would be, are you actually leveraging data from your property management software when you're doing your sales and marketing? And once again, I'm afraid that the most common answer that I'm getting back is that no, we are getting the minimum amount of data points to be able to connect it from the first physical or digital contact down to the actual transaction. And that's a good case because that gives you an ROI, but it's not a good enough case because you can't navigate your sales and marketing incentives. So what I'm trying to picture now is that what we want to do is to build a 360 customer image, which is filled with data from all of these different kind of services and the actual transaction process in order to maximize and build our user experience. Because the single most important point of knowledge will be that 360 customer image. This is where you start to automate your sales processes. This is where you start to increase your user experience. This is where you get your insights in how to train your agents. So it's just vastly important. And what we can see is that most customers are struggling with this. And it's a rather complicated question. I wish I had a simple answer, but I'm afraid there is none. Because it demands a strategical thinking, a long-term plan in order to work with data management. You need to think about this from the right aspect. You need to integrate and sync data points of your interest to build that 360 customer image. And I'm going to give you one advice, and that is the fact that over the past 10, 15 years, it's a very clear indicator of who's running the development fastest. And we can see that the strongest drivers without competition is always marketing and sales. So I suggest piggyback on 1 or 2 of your already strategical partners within marketing or sales, set the scenario, set the goals, and lay out a plan for data management across the future. And that way you can start getting down to a point of creating that 360 customer image if you don't already have it. I'm going to bring it down a notch now, because now this was very high level. So let's try to bring it down to something which is more practical, because I believe that all of our customers have something that they can learn from. You have access to data which you can benefit from and develop your existing business. So I'm going to show you a couple of slides. And the first one is, once again, it's straightforward, but understanding your data is key to leveraging your data. And I actually can't emphasize that enough, because if you're asking the wrong questions, you will be getting the wrong answers. And just being able to actually understand what you want to get out of it, that's the only way for you to get some kind of actionable insights and affect your performance. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. And one thing that I want to talk about first is the common mistake of trying to find patterns in the data you have access to instead of putting the emphasis on the questions. Because the danger is that you're making the wrong assumptions. So instead of just staring at the data in front of you, start looking at the gaps. Start looking at what we refer to as a white space analysis. What data are we actually missing in order to respond to the questions we want to ask? And is there a way of putting context on top of that to get further more insights? So this case is about identifying that white space analysis. And I'm going to be talking about a customer using an online meeting scheduler that we've been provided for a number of years, basically just enabling your online visitors to schedule a meeting with your agent without having a physical or telephone contact, email contact. We're using empty gaps in the calendar or predefined time slots. It really doesn't matter. There's different ways of doing it. But from our perspective, we've always tried to understand how is it changing? How is the business changing? How's the online behavior changing? What kind of insights can we get out of it? And that's done through interviews and surveys and also looking at the data. One of our customers did their own analysis. And what they did was that they actually brought forward this slide. It clearly demonstrates for you the number of meetings on specific weekdays. The task was easy. They wanted to maximize this online scheduling assistant that they had. They wanted to drive more meetings into it. They wanted to see the patterns of how it's being used today. And they presented this graph. It's straightforward. You can see that Tuesday to Friday, we have the most activity. Wednesdays being the top. So needless to say, let's increase availability across weekdays, drive campaigns towards weekdays to maximize the number of online scheduled meetings. Now, if you look at it that way, it looks accurate, but they were asking the wrong questions. And I would like to reverse that question in order to get the right conclusion. And the fact is that instead of just looking at weekdays, we wanted to look at the weekends. So we know that we've got lots of meetings on weekdays, but why don't we have lots of meetings on the weekends? And we looked at this graph instead, adding the available time slots. So you can see now the number of meetings scheduled online. You can see the number of available time slots. And it becomes quite apparent that, well, the available time slots are when agents are most normally put them in their own calendar, which is weekdays, and they don't put it in weekdays. But that doesn't say that that's not what the online visitors actually are asking for. So adding this slide, now suddenly it becomes obvious that the conclusion was wrong, because we can see now that the ratio between scheduled meetings and available time slots is almost 100%. So every single time slot put on a weekend was up for grabs in an instant by visitors of the web page. So instead of having the old recommendation, they released a new recommendation and incentives internally within the customer, and they arranged for new marketing programs driving traffic on weekends for it. So this is one conclusion. This is one very easy accessible data that I think that most have. You probably have performance data, conversion statistics for your agents, like online meetings like this, number of visitors per viewings. You've got a bunch of data, which is within arm's reach. You can just grab out, look at it, ask the right questions, and see if there are some learnings you can find. I'm going to go to another example in this time. And once again, understanding your data is key. That's the only way to leverage your data. So in order to find the right conclusion, sometimes we need to add context. That's exactly what we did in the first scenario. We had some information. We noticed that it was the wrong information because we were looking at the wrong set of questions. So we reversed the questions and then we added data on top of that as a context. So our question is, can we do that again? Can we do that with something else? So in this case, we wanted to improve sales meetings or sales inspections conversion rates. Really simple. My agent is performing 20 meetings per month. He's closing 8. I want him to close 12. What should we do? Okay, so if you're running a large company, you have an immense amount of data. If it's a small company, you have less data. Nevertheless, you can still identify the same trends. So we started out with a pretty basic scenario. We took a time aspect, once again, not weekdays, but in this case, hours. So we added the number of meetings conducted throughout the day on the respective time period. And once again, it gives you a very clear picture. When are the meetings actually occurring? What time of day? It doesn't really give me any insights. It only shows me when and how these meetings are being held. So we wanted to add some context to this because we're looking for the conversion rates. I wanted to add the conversion rates to see if there are any learnings that we can get out of it. And as you can see, the timing of the meeting has not only just a small impact, it's got a huge impact. We can say that we've got almost double the chance of getting that business deal if we take the meeting 8 a.m. in the morning instead of having it in the middle of the day. And that's something which is worth discussing because it's got an immense impact if you use this information in the right way. But now having this data, we also needed to understand why. Why is this happening? And we did so by talking to the agents, asking them questions. Okay, so how do you experience this? Why are you converting more meetings at this time, etc.? We were also asking the customers, what were the biggest drivers behind this? Why did you actually close with this agent? And we developed a theory which is still aligned and it's still accurate. And that is that the more uncomfortable time, the higher pre-qualification took place before the meeting. So what I'm saying is that if you are to take a meeting at 8 a.m. or 10 p.m. or 9 p.m., then you need to make sure that this is actually going to be worth it. So from an agent perspective, we noticed that they were very selective in accepting meetings on those time frames. And they did so only when they knew that they had a chance of actually closing that deal on spot that day. Naturally, there's a lot of seasonal deviances because living in Sweden, as I do, 10 p.m. it's going to be pitch black in the winter, so that's an impossible mission. But nevertheless, across a year, looking at the data, this is what we identified. The other side of this is also to look at the potential seller. So why are they accepting agents at uncomfortable times? And basically, it's the same reason, because they appreciate the effort of an agent going out of his way to meet on my terms. And that makes a huge change. So both of these two examples are giving us insights in terms of how we can drive meetings online at what times and what days, how we can increase conversion rates by looking at the times for the meetings. There's obviously more to it, but nevertheless, it's quite important to realize that we just took a couple of really simple data sets. We asked the right questions and we get some learnings out of it. Now, what you do with it is going to be very much up to the strategy that you develop inside your own company. So, unfortunately, not everything is this simple. I wish it was, but as we started out, there's a really complex environment with 20 plus different services that you need to align. And even though you want to, sometimes it is very difficult. And to be honest, a couple of pieces of a puzzle doesn't provide you with the full picture, and that's really an issue from case to case. So I will repeat my advice, piggyback on a marketing or sales engine with access to benchmarking data with previous experience of doing these kind of analysis to be able to identify patterns inside your own company. So if you haven't already done it, I suggest that you start thinking about your own data management strategy. How are you going to benefit from that data in the future? So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Stefan. It sounds like you've done that before.
I have, but insights are always changing. So it's super interesting just to follow what happens in the industry.
Can I ask you, is it even possible to run a real estate agency without a deep understanding of the data?
On a local level, definitely. So, I mean, we can see that it's happening, still happening. It's going to keep happening for some time. But if you intend to run a larger brand, nationwide brand, a modern real estate agency, there is no choice, basically. If you haven't started already, you need to start now, because the shift towards digital have been going rapidly for the past couple of years, and it's just the pace is just increasing.
But I can tell in many other industries that, you know, it's also a necessity that basically every person within the organization has, you know, this type of knowledge or at least an understanding of what they don't understand. But what's your image of that?
Actually, that's a really good question. And no, being a real estate agent, of course, you don't need to be a digital mastermind, but you need to be part of an organization that actually does understand the challenges, and an organization that is building the brand and creating the opportunities and tools you need as an agent. And to be fair, we have seen a lot of new brands appear over the past 5 years, and they've got one thing in common, basically all of them. They're over-investing in marketing. They're using the most modern tech stacks. They've created what I'm referring to as a 360 customer image. And we can see that automation is taking a big part of that process. So being an agent inside a company like that, you have a benefit, because that means you can actually do what you do best, focus on sales, and then you have really professional, smart people around you to give you the opportunities and all the benefits aside from that.
Do you feel that you know, overall your feel for are real estate agents and also agencies, are they willing to change and make this transformation, and you know, willing to learn more about this process?
But definitely yes. Okay. But of course, it's every market is different, and that's all. That's a separate session if we're going to be talking about the differences from one to the next market. But as soon as you realize where, in terms of maturity, the respective market is lying, then you can navigate that. But the willingness to change I'd say definitely so, and it also comes without question, because their customers, new generations,
of course,
they're shifting towards it whether you want it or not. So you can accept the change and you can go with it, but it's going to be very difficult to fight it.
You mentioned that the data and the value of the data is constantly changing, and I understand that this is a very broad question, but do you have any insightful thing to say about, you know, the cookie death? Everything is happening at the same time. We have an Apple update, which is quite, you know, a lot of things happening for advertisers in terms of that, and also, you know, the tracking possibilities on Facebook, for instance. Do you have any insights on those very big 3 questions?
Once again, it's going to be a big session, but naturally, when GDPR came into place, that was a game changer. And now with the cookie death, which is not really death, but nevertheless, it changes the way the playbook needs to be working. We need to do things differently, but it also increases the importance of actually having this data set under control. So what we can see now that needs to happen to a bigger extent is that you need to benefit from your actual CRM database. You can't align completely on Facebook. You can't align yourself completely on just your web page. You need to connect the dots together with them to get insights from all levels. Because we've got loads of data of our customers throughout the entire transaction process, throughout the entire sales funnel, and that's a process where we don't break any laws. We're working with them, together with them, using digital tools, creating insights that we can act upon. And just connecting those 2 dots is going to become even more important. So I do believe in the cookie death from the aspect of, yes, it's happening, but it's not going to destroy anything. It's rather going to build something. So what we're getting at now in the next stage is going to be a more connected reality between the different platforms.
Yeah, I like your attitude towards this, because I can't help but thinking about like the music industry, and you know how unwilling, at least from the outside, how unwilling they were to change. And I feel you have a very positive attitude towards all these massive changes. So
it's the only thing we can do, embrace it. I mean, it's a fact. This is
think
happening.
That's a very good
we need
learning.
to deal with it. We need to be better than we were before. And we need to think one step ahead. So once again, the connectivity now, it's going to be crucial.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Very valuable insights, I think. Thank you for today.
Thank you for having me.
So...